Start. Let's start the recording. This is your meeting. You're with us, girl.
Okay, well, I thought you were in the middle of something. I was like, okay.
All right. So just real quick again, what is today? It's Wednesday, July 27th. This is the Local Workforce Innovation Area 23 Board Training Session with the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. Those of you joining us online, welcome. We encourage your participation, but we hope that you remain muted when you are not participating. Feel free to unmute yourself at any time, but just be mindful of background noise. So mute yourself when you are not talking. And remember that the meeting is being recorded and is a matter of public record. So be mindful what comes across your video camera. With that, do we want to do introductions? Should we start out with that?
Let's do that.
All right. So those of you who are here with us in person, we'll start with introductions here, and then we'll do something for those joining us online as well. So I'll start. By now, you probably know I'm Jamie Corda-Hajawi, Director for LWIA 23. And we have guests today. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Brian Ellis with the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, Office of Employment and Training, and I'm joined by
Deb Waldrop, formerly with the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, currently helping provide technical assistance to local workforce areas.
I'm Kelly Denton. I am the WIA Director at CFS.
Gerald Blue. I'm the LWIA 23 Board Chair.
Denise Smith. I'm the Director of Human Resources with Sarah Bush Lincoln.
Chris Roll, Lakeland College. Welcome to the building, everyone. Glad to have you here this afternoon.
Kim Taylor, FACO Enterprises. I'm a board member.
Kevin Busher, CEO at CEFS.
Devin Kroger, Business Services Specialist for LWIA 23.
Awesome. Now I'm going to have you guys online introduce yourselves real quick. I'll say your name just to keep it moving, and you can wave hi and say your title if you would like to. We have Aaron Hacker on the line with us.
Hi, good day. This is Aaron Hacker, and I work for the Illinois Department of Human Services in the Mid-Illinois Family and Community Resource Center, and I work with Tana.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. Then we have Kevin Binker. Are you able to unmute?
Yep. Kevin Binker, business representative for the Operating Engineers, Local 841 out of Terre Haute, Indiana.
Welcome. Thank you. We have Carolyn Jorgensen.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Jorgensen. I'm the Rehabilitation Services Supervisor for the only DRS office, Title IV.
Welcome. Then we have Casey Bergholzer.
Hi, this is Casey Burkholzer. I'm the local office manager for our one stop here in Effingham. I work for IDES and represent Title III.
Welcome. Then we have Cassie Eigert.
Hi, Cassie Eiger. I represent the Illinois Manufacturing Excellence Center. I'm a regional manager out of Clay County.
Welcome. Then we have Debbie Whitaker.
Hi, everyone. I am Debbie Whitaker, and I'm the WIA Financial Operations Coordinator.
Thanks for being here, Debbie. Then we have Joy Fitz.
Hi, my name is Joy Fitz. I'm with Cascade College. I am the Dean of Workforce Engagement and Industrial Careers.
Welcome. Then we have Julie Obermark.
Good afternoon. I'm Julie Obermark. I serve as the Provost and Vice President of Instructional Services at Cascade College.
Thank you for being here. Then we have Mandy Martin.
Good afternoon. I'm Mandy Martin. I'm the AGM of Corporate Human Resources at North American Lighting, and I represent Edgar County.
Thank you, Mandy. We have Roy Shelley.
Hello, I am the Director of Human Resources for Kerner Distributor and local LWIA board member.
Thanks, Roy. And then we have Courtney Yockey.
Hello, my name is Courtney Yockey. I'm with the Effingham Regional Growth Alliance and the board member for LWIA 23.
Awesome. Thank you. Is there anyone who's joining us remotely that I missed? All right. Thank you all for being here. And with that, I will turn it over to Brian and Deb with DCEO.
Thanks, Jamie. I'm going to put the agenda slide. We'll go through that. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad that everyone could come out and join us, and you've taken some time out of your busy schedules to be with us this afternoon. We've got some material to get through and just a brief agenda you can see there on the screen. For today, we want to kind of give an overview of the WIA program, just a basic overview, nothing too in the weeds or anything like that. But particularly, we want to focus on the roles and responsibilities of the chief elected officials and the local workforce board, innovation board members. Part of the presentation, we're going to focus a little bit on local workforce area 23's service levels and fiscal performance, and a little bit on the corrective action plan, which we'll get into kind of towards the end of the presentation, and some next priority or high priority next steps. Next slide, please. So as I said, I'm Brian Ellis. I'm with the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. I'm the Southern Region Workforce Development Manager, and I'm joined by Deb Waldrop, who used to hold this position a few years ago. She is now our Senior Workforce Management Consultant.
That sounds old.
It does. So, yeah, why are we here today? Well, a few reasons. Local workforce areas had some turnover with their chief elected officials and board members over the last few years. So we wanted to give kind of a review or a briefing of this material, to make sure everyone's kind of on the same page. Some of this information may be new for some of you, but for a lot of you who've been around for a while, this is going to kind of be a review. Another reason is, recently the workforce area here has been placed on a corrective action plan because it's running a little bit short on serving youth in terms of numbers and expenditures, which we'll get into in a little bit of detail here later in the presentation. But one of the primary reasons really is recently the workforce area has decided to transition and change fiscal agents from Lakeland College to SEFs, and that was a decision made by the chief elected officials. So we want to kind of go through what do the next steps look like in that transition process. But before we really kind of get into all of that, and that's a lot, I know it sounds like a lot, just a couple or a housekeeping item. We will cover this material and there will be opportunity to pause between sections of this so we can ask questions, we can have a dialogue if we need to, and hopefully it's a productive discussion for everybody. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Deb here to give us a little overview of the WIA program.
Thanks, Brian. So for some of you, if you've been around for a while, this is going to be a review, if you will. But it's always good to refresh our memory in what it is and how we came into being. So, if you just bear with me for a minute. So this slide is, it's a brief review. The partnerships are set forth in law. We have 102 counties in the state of Illinois, and that is prescribed by law how they're formed into local workforce areas. And in Illinois, we have 22, and each one of the local workforce areas has a consortium of CEOs that work with their who also work with their local workforce board, and each group has a set of responsibilities. Some of them are in concert with each other, some of them are exclusive, and so for you as local workforce board members, as you fill your role, understand that it's paramount to the success of your area and programs and services and the delivery of those services for your participation. The staff can't do it by themselves. They need help. So if you go to the next slide, please. So this will just kind of give you the overview. With the way the service delivery is, it starts with the governor. The governor appoints a workforce innovation board, just like you. We have one at the state level too. And then from the governor we have responsible partners. And I'm happy to hear that some of our partners are with us today. So we've got Title 1B, which is Department of Commerce. We've got Title 3, which is Wagner Pizer with Employment Security. We've got Title 4, which is Voc Rehab, and Title 2, which is Adult Ed, Community College. And so from each one of those agencies, because every agency has its own set of rules, right? So from each one of those agencies, there's a person or persons who sit on the state interagency work group. And that work group is designed to help run interference, if you will, for the issues that we have, trying to put the program together, everybody coming from their own agencies and trying to line things out. If you go further down, look on the left-hand side, we have 22 local workforce areas, 22 local workforce boards, and 22 Title 1B administrators. On the right-hand side, you see we have community colleges with 39 districts, 48 colleges, and 80 adult ed providers, and that's a really good measure to show for the state of Illinois. Not every state can say they've got that kind of participation. So we are lucky, we are very lucky in the state of Illinois to have those resources available to us. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. Could be one of the little ones that my grandkids were catching this weekend. Next slide, please. So again, you know, as the way things come down and this is just a reminder of the way, you know, the flow of the laws, regulations, and policies, all of which we must be aware of and able to put into practice. So when the federal government, the Department of Labor issues either a new regulation or a policy letter, TGLs or TENS, as they're called at the federal level. It comes to the state, who then reviews that, and they see what is either missing from current policy for the state, needs to be updated or written if we don't have one. Then those come down to the local workforce area, and that's where your local workforce board and board staff come into play to help either establish a policy if you don't have one, and you work with the staff, work with the boards and the local officials to see. And this is where you come in, you're key, because you are the eyes and ears of your communities. So you know what the needs are. So you look at those policies and see if that's helping benefit with the input of some of your service providers to see if we're on board and, you know, practicing what we preach and that it's helping people. This is one of the reasons that we need to have key staff in place to help ensure that your local policies and procedures are kept up to date and relevant, and the needs of participants and businesses that you serve are being served well. So just another thing to do, right? Next slide, please. So this is just an overview of the services, and you guys are probably very well aware of the services that are provided here. We need to have a viable and vibrant service delivery system because we impact the lives of many individuals and businesses. And so we have to be aware of the needs of our communities. That's where, and I'll say this again, this is kind of a tagline that I have, you are workforce ambassadors in each of your communities. So you should be aware of the needs of the people that you are in groups and organizations with and businesses that you work with. And so you can bring those needs back to this group, this governing body, and to your service provider so that we can make sure that we are providing the services that are needed or that translates into policy as well. Are our policies meeting the needs? Another area to consider for this group is here with incumbent workers, you administer the incumbent worker training, apprenticeship expansion, and the state supplemental grants at the grant recipient fiscal agent level. So that'll be transitioning as well. In other words, currently they're administered through the board, through the staff with Lakeland College. That will transition over to CEFS, who's been chosen as the service provider and the one-stop shop, the grant recipient fiscal agent. So they have a big role to fill. I mean, it's not uncommon to see that across the state, but you know they're going to need active and engaged board and CEO members. And it's necessary that we stay engaged so that we can make sure there's a seamless transition of all those services. Anybody have any questions? No? Brian, cheers.
You know that's the ongoing throughout the state, the being the grant provider and the fiscal agent as well, or grant partner and fiscal agent as well. Did I hear that correctly?
I can't hear him.
Courtney, you cut out a bit there at the beginning. Can you restate that, please?
You had made mention, and I just want to make sure I heard it correctly, that it's not uncommon to find a grant provider or grant partner and the fiscal agent to be two in the same. Such as in the role of CFS.
No, that is not uncommon. And currently we have 14 units of local government. That's okay. So I was going to get to it later, but I'll go ahead and break it down for you now. So, so the way what local workforce areas are structured, so we ask what type of entities are grant recipient fiscal agent. Some of them are 14 of them.
One moment, because I got a spinning thing here. Oh, those of you joining us remotely, can you still hear us?
Yes, I can still hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, my Zoom is showing is connecting, so I wasn't sure if they could still hear us. Go ahead.
That's okay. But it's not uncommon for the same entity to provide all those functions. There are safeguards in place to make sure that there's a separation of duties. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Brian.
All right, are we ready to move on? Okay. I don't know if folks can see the slide remotely. If we can.
Did you lose your connection?
I think I must have. So let me.
We'll pause just for a minute because there's some data on this next slide that I'd like everyone to see.
They may be digging up here like they were out by my house yesterday.
Chris, are you able to join the meeting remotely? Because it's not letting me back in because it's already started and I don't know. I'm very confused.
I think I've got the link right here.
So do you have CEOs that have taken on their own responsibility as a fiscal agent? Works well.
Most of the time when that's the case, it's smaller areas.
I think I'm back on now, Chris.
You back on? Yeah, I mean, there are 14.
Geographically smaller areas or population?
Both.
Both.
Well,
because I mean, we've got 13 counties and we're huge, you know, geographically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully everyone's seeing the next slide here. And this is really where I wanted to kind of start this conversation as far as just a quick overview of where LWIA 23 is now. And this information you're seeing here is current as of July the 3rd, 2024. So I've broken this down by fund streams, and this is the number of registrants we have in the program by each fund stream. You've got youth, adults, and dislocated workers. The far left, or the second column from the left, or program year 2023 plan, that's the plan that the local workforce area put forth that based on their allocation and funding levels, they were planning to serve 175 youth, 200 adults, and 32 dislocated workers. So we had some registrants in the previous program year from PY 2022 that kind of carried forward there. And for the year-to-date new registrants, you can see that for youth, we've added 38 new youth, 62 new adults, and 56 new dislocated workers. And the program, like the total number of people served are in that last column, 110 youth, 138 adults, and 70 dislocated workers. You'll notice I've highlighted youth in yellow. This is an area where we're struggling just a little bit in terms of numbers and expenditures, which I'll get into in a little more detail later here in the next couple of slides. But I just want to preface that by saying, we've been working together with LWIA 23 to kind of put together an action plan to bring those numbers back to where they should be and improve that, the enrollments, to increase the enrollments and increase the expenditures. And we've made some progress. I think we've made some really good progress, but there's still some work to do. So next slide, please. So here are the grants, kind of the grant inventory, if you will, for the workforce area. So those first two grants up there, those are what we call the formula grants, and that's the funding that serves your adults, dislocated workers, and youth. So in 2023, there's approximately, and this is a little bit dated, this comes from the end of May, our financial data. I should have started with that comment. So these numbers may be a little bit different today, but probably not by much. So you've got a little bit more than $1 million in PY23 funds, a little over 2.6 million in the new 2024 allocation, which this program year has just started July the 1st. The local workforce area also has a rapid response grant to help serve some increased numbers of dislocated workers from recent layoffs, I think primarily in Effingham, like the Quad Graphics event and some others. That's about $673,000. And there's two other grants that are in the pipeline, but they haven't been issued to LWIA 23 yet. And that's the state workforce supplemental grant, that's state funding that's it's used primarily to address like rural community needs, shortfalls in funding. I think last year this area had a grant that funded some pretty special or unique projects and helped fill some funding gaps in other areas. So that's out there, just hasn't been issued yet. And there's also an apprenticeship expansion grant that is out there as well. And it's probably going to be around 150,000-ish. And that's to fund an apprenticeship navigator to help businesses create apprenticeship programs and fulfill their talent pipeline. So that's an overview of the grants. That second, kind of going down the slide there, that second bullet point, that's the information from the previous slide. You can kind of see the breakdown there. So a total summary, there's the workforce area plan to serve 407 people across the 3 funding streams. We're currently serving 318, and of those, 156 are new. And when I say new, those are people we've brought into the program since July 1st, 2023. Okay. I just want to also say, like with the youth program, you all in this room are most of your board members. So again, like Deb said, you're kind of ambassadors of the program. So you know your communities better than anyone does. You know where the needs are or where the opportunities are for this funding to actually help people. You may be in a position, in your roles to provide like program awareness, like, hey, this funding is available to help folks. Not that you need to know like all the technical ins and outs of program eligibility or things like that. That's for the workforce area of the LWIA 23 folks to do, but just to have a basic awareness that this assistance is available to job seekers and businesses. It will help go a long way to kind of drive these numbers and improve our enrollments in the youth program. So it's we're looking kind of for a partnership. Yes, Lakeland College or CEFs, they're running the program, but they need to do that in partnership with you all too. So they could use your support. Next slide, please. So what are the fiscal requirements for the WIA program? So they're laid out here on this slide. So 100% of the PY23 grants have to be obligated by June 30th of 2024. 80% of those funds of the PY24 funds have to be obligated by June 30th of 2025. And I'll just pause there just to say, those two benchmarks, those two requirements are very important because If the local workforce area doesn't meet the 80% obligation requirement, then they run the risk of having the funding that's allocated to them reallocated to other workforce areas that can use the funding. So we really want to be tracking, where we're at during the program year in terms of the obligations and expenditures. So another requirement is 50% of the total annual expenditures have to be focused on training job seekers, and that's specifically for the adult and dislocated worker programs. And these last two deal with the youth program. So half of all the youth funds have to be spent on out-of-school youth, and 20% of all the youth funds have to be spent on work-based learning. And that's like paid work experience, internships, in some cases on-the-job training. That's where we can supplement or even pay all of the wages for youth individual to get quality job experience, to give them that maybe it's their first job, they don't have any experience previously, so now they've got something to add to their their application or their resume to show that they've got a work history now. So that's how it really benefits some of those youth, is they've never had a job before. Next slide, please. Okay, some of the other data points, I mentioned the direct training rate. That's for adults and dislocated workers. The requirement, at least 50% of that funding has to be spent on direct training. We're just over 51%, so that's good. But for the youth program, this is where we're a little concerned. And again, we're working through an action plan now to get these numbers back in line to where they should be. For the work-based learning, for the 22 grant, we're just over 8%. For the 23 grant, we're just over 13%. Really need to be at 20% or more in those two benchmarks. And then for the youth out of school, again, it's broken down. Program year 22, we're at 13%, a little bit higher. And for the 23 grant, we're just over 33%. And that's where we need to be at 50% or higher for that funding. And again, that's current as of May 30th, 2024.
Can we ask questions as we're going, or would you rather wait until the end?
Yeah.
Okay. So the out of school youth, I just want to make sure adult education students, if they are 17 to 24, are out of school youth, even though they're attending GED classes.
I don't think if they're in GED, I think they have to not be attached.
That's a good question, because there is a provision, I think, for those adult ed students
that's right.
they're not considered in school, but there's a list, I think, that we have, the state and the workforce area probably has it too, that lays out what those programs are.
I think they're all adult education providers.
It used to be just certain ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. All right. I will just add quickly on that slide. Sorry, Jamie. The WIA program's up for reauthorization this year. We're not really sure what the final version of that's going to look like. So some of these fiscal requirements I'm mentioning today could change. We don't know yet, but we're definitely monitoring that. So, okay, great. So that's a lot of information in a very short period of time. Hopefully I didn't lose anybody. So if you have any questions or comments or anything, let's hear them.
Those of you joining online, feel free to enter things in the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on it, but also preferably feel free to speak up.
Going once. Well, we'll have other opportunities to talk and ask questions here a little bit later. So I'm going to turn it back over to Deb to talk about workforce boards and chief elected official responsibilities and some of the local governance agreements.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, so I'm sure you're familiar with the roles and responsibilities for you as local workforce board members, but I just want to, like, again, refresh, and review on some of these areas. each person that sits on the WIB, as both of us have mentioned, we consider you a workforce ambassador for your areas, and the staff can't do it all on their own. They can't. You've got too large of an area. There's too many things that need attention to, and so that's where they need your assistance. So in carrying out the responsibilities, you need to keep in mind, as he said, you don't need to know all the technicalities, but referrals are golden. They really are. And whether that's to DHS or IDES or to Title I, referrals are golden, or to our community colleges, because we're working partnership together. But we may not be able to, as a workforce area, pay for every single thing that person needs, but that's why we have partnerships, to help, blend all that together to make our people and businesses successful. So this slide just kind of reviews some of the overarching tasks for planning. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the planning process that you go through, and the local policies, and the mods that have to go to DCEO, and then how we align the available funds. You have to be aware of how the disbursements are directed and dispersed. We allocate the funding to best address the needs. And then on the administrative tasks, we have to have the one-stop operator MOU, identify and approve the training providers, and negotiate the performance goals with DCEO. And that's a pain. And, that's something I don't envy you all of, actually. And then, as the program oversight, we look at this is what Brian just went over a little bit, the obligations and the expenditures. There are benchmarks that have to be met with each one of those. The key activities, like the training and those types of things. And then the client data. We have our staff that, at the career specialists, et cetera, that they take care of the enrollments and the training and the exits and the outcomes and tracking and all that stuff. So this is all information that should come back to you as a board, and you should be digesting it and seeing what areas that you can help with. Sometimes we take it for granted, but it all goes hand in hand for successful programs. Next slide, please. And so we go just a little bit deeper here, and the areas of financial performance and oversight. And, we have to know what those fiscal benchmarks are. Just like he went over, you've got to have 80% spent or obligations by the end of the program year, and your expenditure rates, et cetera. And just to know that we have those percentages that have to come to the out-of-school youth, and what's included in out-of-school youth and what's not included in out-of-school youth. And I need to get the policy out and read it again, and then performance, progress towards meeting those negotiated standards. And this one we've got highlighted there, beware of train and pray. We don't train just for the sake of training. We train for an end goal. We want our people and our businesses to have successful employees. We want the individuals to have successful employment that's self-sustaining. That's our goal. In the compliance, we all kind of get, overwhelmed with all the monitoring that goes on, but it's necessary and it keeps us on track. And it's if we use monitoring right at the state, local level, whatever, it's used as a technical assistance tool. These are the areas that we've either got a best practice in and we need to replicate it and make it work elsewhere, or we've got areas that we need to review. And if it's a participant that has a certain area of lacking or whatever, then we look at the other participants that we have and make sure that we're on the right track and getting all those things taken care of. So that's why you have to have, that's why we have to have the staff in place to take care of that. Like I said, we have the federal grants, the state grants, the special grants, and internal monitoring. And that's something that I don't know when the last time you had internal monitoring, but that needs to happen again. You need to at least be doing it on an annual basis. Most local workforce areas take what the state does and they just kind of mirror it on a scaled down basis to get it done. But the purpose of the monitoring isn't to say bad dog, no biscuit. It's to say, let's stay ahead of the curve. Let's keep this and let's keep our program moving upward. Next slide. So for you as local workforce board members, some of the roles and responsibilities are different for the WIB as opposed to the CEOs, but some of them are done in conjunction as well. So I know you all are familiar with looking at your local policies and updating those and developing and submitting the 4-year plan and negotiating. Who does your negotiations with your CEOs and required partners on the cost of the infrastructure? Do y'all have a committee for that? Don't everybody speak at once.
Oversight.
Yeah, that's right. But you do that. So those are some of the responsibilities. It comes back to your board. What actually, I know some of the actual business is taken care of in your executive committee or, some of your committees, but it all comes back to your full board. And then negotiating and agreeing on the performance indicators, the certification of the one-stop centers, and the fiscal and programmatic oversight. That includes, as I mentioned before, the awareness of internal and state monitoring results. Like I said, those can be the best form of technical assistance ever. If you look at a monitoring, and I don't care if you have a finding or management recommendation or best practice, you take that and look at it as a written form of technical assistance, and it can absolutely be key to moving forward in the right direction. So, you're also encouraged to formally review your programs and systems for effectiveness annually, but it must occur at a minimum over, a couple of years. So next slide, please. The chief elected officials, I won't stay too long here, but this is just to point out some of the differences in the responsibilities. They have some exclusive responsibilities, and number one is to serve as or name an alternate entity as the grant recipient and fiscal agent, and that is what just occurred here. And so that's one of the reasons why we are here. And as we discussed a little bit earlier, we have 22 local workforce areas, and we've had the question before, so we went ahead and put it in here, that how local workforce areas are structured. So, take this. Some of them are structured. There are 14 local workforce areas that are run or governed or that administered by local units of government or a county or city. Okay. 6 of them are incorporated as not-for-profits, and 2 are run by community colleges. So there's a mix across the state of how the local workforce areas are configured. It does not absolve the CEOs from their responsibilities financially as far as any misfit or mishandled funds. So we do take it's in the law, and we do take that seriously. And so while we know that these are responsibilities we have, we also appreciate that you all have personal lives and other things to do. So that's when we come together like this, we hope that we get your feedback, questions, whatever, that we can help maybe clear up while we're here. What you're going to look at when they appoint you as a member, you were appointed as a member, they looked for you to be their voice, the voice of the county, the voice of the constituents of the county, and that they serve. And so we're not to be selfish, but that's what we all should be doing anyway, is to be looking out for that. Some other items that that have to be in concert with is just, well, it's all kind of lined up there. The negotiating the MOU, and some of it's kind of dry, but it's necessary. So next slide, please. So the governance agreements. We talked to the CEOs this morning, and they'll be looking at updating their CEO consortium agreement, their CEO grant recipient fiscal agent agreement. That's going to have to be redone here shortly. and their CEO designation and acknowledgement form, which gives the authority to act on behalf of the CEOs. And then later on, you will be also revisiting your CEO Local Workforce Innovation Board agreement. And I don't think anything, just from what I reviewed right now, needs to be really changed, but you want to look for it, because I think you'll probably have some new members coming on in October, or you should probably, with the rotation of the way board members rotate in and out. But anyway, and you know, in the next 3 months, I would say you need to review those and just make sure everybody's on board with it. Next slide, please. So again, they'll be looking at their CEO consortium agreement. It just outlines what the expectation is amongst the CEOs, how they're going to operate, and you know, the expectations they have with each of them. And next slide. The LWIA agreement, this is where you're a little bit more specific. The expectations that they have for the local workforce board and its members. So like I said, this will be something that you'll be looking at here in the next, I would like to say this fall sometime, but I don't think it has to be done right now. Something that the LWIB is going to need to consider, though, and this is working in conjunction with your CEOs, and this is going to be also working in conjunction with your new fiscal agent, is you need to review what kind of qualifications you want for a director and staff to assist with carrying out the duties, whoever that's going to be. That's a decision that's going to be made here. You have to establish a set of qualifications for the position of director. And we can help with that a little bit later on, but the director and staff have to be subject to limitations on payment of salary and bonuses. That's per the act. And they need to help with all the WIB functions. And so in this case, you know, where the LWIBs, are they going to staff the LWIB, any additional functions, there need to be an additional agreement. And I think that's going to come in the form of the CEO fiscal agent agreement. So anyway, it is not uncommon for local organizations to function simultaneously in multiple functions. That's, you know, a variety of roles. We see that across the state, across the program, actually. So it's, you know, that's why we have the agreements in place to help set forth the expectations. So yeah, so you guys got a little bit of work to do ahead of you on the agreements, but as far as these go, the ones that really are imminent are the 3 that I mentioned. The LWIB agreement will come at a later date. Next one. And then this one will show you what the expectation, how the CEO fiscal agent agreement, what it needs to encompass. The expectations of the CEOs to the fiscal agent, grant recipient, general expectations for the authority, responsibilities, administration, procedures, services, and reporting. And those are kind of, well, it's mandatory, but I mean, the agreement will outline it a lot in a lot more detail. Okay, next slide. And we noticed in the previous agreement that some language had been left out on separation of duties. Do not be surprised if that is included, because it's actually part of the template. Somehow along the lines, it got lost in translation. So there will need to be the separation of duties and conflict of interest statements put in that new one.
Have you shared the template with CEOs?
Yeah.
It's on work now. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I was going to do that since you did it.
Yeah. No, we did that. We discussed it this morning, and they were all like, "Oh, we didn't know that happened." So you know,
I think they were worried about getting one, but if you guys have a template, they should be
Yeah.
at ease that there's.
Well, we used to not. Many years ago, we didn't have a template for any of them. And we just kind of let the local workforce areas pull their own together. And then that didn't work out very well. So, so we put together templates and they're Word documents. So they're editable, you know, but it gives you a good place to start. So, but anyway, go to the next slide. Did anyone have any questions or discussion? Quiet group. After lunch. Okay, well, we'll move on and I'll turn it over to Brian.
All right, thanks, Deb. So we'll talk a little bit about the current corrective action plan. So this is going to change a little bit, but one thing that will remain the same is this concern that we have around the youth program and the expenditure rates for both out-of-school youth and the work-based learning rate. So we, as I said, the workforce area is already, they've implemented an action plan, I believe, earlier this spring, probably around February, January. And they've been working through it. They've been making some pretty good progress. We still have a ways to go, but I think we'll get there. So we're going to, take a look at that and maybe adjust some of the strategies going forward to make sure that we hit these goals for program year 2024. So that's one thing. Another thing, now that this transition is happening, we're going to have to look at program personnel, the staffing requirements to support the workforce board and that work. That's a lot of, there's a lot of activity, that goes into that. So that's a main concern as well. We want to make sure we're providing the right oversight. Deb mentioned internal monitoring that has to happen at least annually. So that's part of that board function. The fiscal management, obviously, and other support activities. So that'll, that's one area we're really going to be focused on in the next few weeks here, is getting that structure built out. Also, we want to look at the communication strategies between the new fiscal agent, CEFs, the chief elected officials, and the workforce board to make sure everyone's on the same page with how the program's operating and how it's performing. And any other technical assistance needs, which I'm sure there will be some as we kind of get into this a little bit further. And that could come from us at DCEO. It could come from other partner agencies as well. So it just depends on what those needs are. We'll be looking at those continuously. Next slide, please. So some of those next steps, and we've already started with some of this now. The paramount concern as I get into this, really we're looking at the highest priority here is continuity of services to job seekers, the individuals we're serving, those adults, youth, dislocated workers, and the businesses. I mean, there's a lot of activity here with incumbent worker training and apprenticeships. All those things need to go on uninterrupted. That's our first and primary concern, and that's going to drive the rest of these things. So, the CEOs, Lakeland College and CEFs, we're going to have to come together and implement a transition plan, get on the same page to make this a smooth transition and make sure those services continue. We're going to expect regular updates on the progress of this transition to a new fiscal agent, so we can, see if there's issues, if there's roadblocks or hiccups, if you will, we can kind of work through those. Another thing that'll happen is the department will come and do a pre-award review of the new fiscal agent to make sure that they have, the administrative capacity to carry out the program. They've got the structures in place, fiscally and programmatically, that they meet all those requirements of the federal 1B circulars and things like that. Immediately, and we talked to the CEOs about this morning, these governance agreements will have to be updated, and they're working through that right now. So there's 3 main agreements I've listed there. They're really the acknowledgement and designation form that's naming the new fiscal agent, CEO consortium agreement, that's how the 13 CEOs come together and conduct business. We're going to have to update that to reflect the new fiscal agent. And then that's really important is the new CEO grant recipient fiscal agent agreement. And that's how the CEOs have designated CEFs to be the new fiscal agent, how they will conduct business and what those expectations are. And then that last bullet point is really the action plan about the youth program, which, you know, again, we've made some pretty significant progress, I think. We've just got a little ways to go. So, you know, again, we're going to be working with CEFs to kind of implement those structures to provide that board support and the administration of the program. All right.
Excuse me.
Questions? Any questions? I know that was a lot.
As we, I mean, our time frame is a couple months.
Yeah.
As far as updates that you would like to see, how often are you wanting weekly updates, or what do you?
Yeah, so we've got a standing meeting that we've arranged with Lakeland College, and now we've invited CEFs to the table, so we're going to probably get those updates at least weekly. But definitely, if issues arise along the way, I mean, as those happen, we want to know about them immediately so we can resolve them. So, you know, so we're kind of, I'm not going to say uncharted territory, but we need to see how things progress in terms of like what level of intervention DCEO will have kind of through the whole process.
Do you have any questions or concerns, or need additional information on anything? No.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat right now, but if there's anyone online who has questions, please feel free to unmute yourself.
Kevin, Kelly, do you guys have any questions?
I'd say that it's a lot to process. Definitely appreciate the information, and we'll get a copy of the presentation, won't we? And I know it's being recorded.
Yes, Courtney, I'm going to email a copy of the slides to everybody, you know, even those that didn't attend, just so they have that reference for sure.
But definitely appreciate your guys' guidance and providing the information today.
Sure, thank you. We're glad that everyone put some time aside today. I know everyone's really busy, so we appreciate your engagement. Definitely appreciate that. So, I mean, anytime there's questions as board members, certainly reach out to me. And if I don't know the answer, I'll find it for you. We've got a lot of work to do together in partnership, and you know, I think things will go fine. We'll just we'll get there. So. Any more questions?
None in the chat.
All right. Well, there's no questions or feedback. You all are free to go. We're finished. That's what we have today. So.
Thank you for coming down.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Up, down, around, right?
It's up for me. I'm in Marion. It's okay. Yeah.
Okay, with that, I will go ahead and I'll stop the recording.